before that in the story, he's like, I held my breath and just thought, I'm going to hold my breath so long that until I get enlightened. And he holds his breath and his whole body's on fire, and like, and then he just gives up and is like, wait a minute, I have another choice. I've always had another choice. I already know how to do this, because I'm not this adult figure that takes things way too seriously. That's not who I am. Like, it's just a made up thing, I don't know if it's helpful, but it's a nice story to read anyways, to see this like struggle and striving, and yeah.
Like how he was at his like breaking point. Like he drew
Breaking
his best conclusions.
Yeah.
And it happened after right what you're describing right now, in the sense that he was doing the super extreme self-flagellation of starving himself to the brim, where he almost dies, because he I think that the mindset then is that if you starve yourself enough, you'll pay for your sins in the past, you'll suddenly be happy. And that's what we're doing when we're saying we should be doing these things. We should be doing this because we should be doing it so we can get a future result, right? I should be starving myself so then I can become enlightened or become happy or whatever it is. But what Joe's describing is he had the realization that no, it's not a means to an end. It's just an end in itself.
There's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. That's always a good one I like. That if you want your future to look like happy, and you want to look back on your life and be like, wow, I lived a really happy, satisfied life, then just be happy right now. That's the only way that it's going to happen. Otherwise you're going to look back and be like, holy shit, I was sitting there like miserable on this call for no reason.
That's cool. That's a cool way to think of it. Like if you were about to die, like you probably wouldn't care about much other than just like enjoying the time you had. So like maybe like think like how if you're like on your deathbed, you probably just like leave peacefully. Enjoy your last.
And this just speaking from experience, this is like kind of, I've heard this a lot from practitioners, and it's sometimes literally right on, like it gets to that point sometimes for some people that it's on the deathbed. For me, it was like I had suicidal thoughts for so many years, and there was a moment where I was like, all right, I'm just gonna fucking do this. I'm committing suicide. But like right before that, that's when it sort of clicked for me, is I was like, holy shit, like this is so silly. This is so ridiculous, because like I could just be happy instead, and it gets to that point for some people, that like this is not like a unique story. A lot of people have this story where it's like it didn't click in my head. But it's not like a click and then it's there forever. It's like, unless I remember and put it into practice, no matter what experience you've had, it doesn't matter, like it just really doesn't, because like the first step is just remembering that we're in the here now and that there's no past and there's no future, like, yeah. And I know you've heard it. I know I'm just repeating shit, but it's worth repeating, because like we're all repeating it to ourselves over and over again, Yeah, what's up, Robert?
Joe, this might be a bit personal, but after you had the experience where you stopped being suicidal, and you were like, if I want to die, like I can just be happy. Did you ever like have suicidal thoughts again after that, or was it just like?
No, I haven't had any since then. No.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I mean, I still get like really depressed. I get depressed and sad and stuff, but I see the ridiculousness of it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Abby and I are gonna get going. We're gonna eat lunch.
All right.
But,
all right.
It's good seeing you again.
Yeah.
Great seeing you, Alex.
Smile.
Catch you soon, buddy.
Bye.
By smiling.
Yeah, remember to smile.
No, I mean, like, there's some momentum to it where, like, I mean, I was suicidal for so long that, like, there's a momentum to our thought patterns and our thought formations, right? And so, like, it's like this thought naturally leads to this, but like there's no momentum to it, and it's so quick that I can see how ridiculous of a thought it is. Not ridiculous. Dhammarato doesn't like when I say the word ridiculous. He says I should say hilarious, and it is kind of a hilarious thought, right? Where it's like, wait a minute, you're going to end like your only experience of reality right now. Is there nothing else that you can change? Is there nothing else you can possibly think of? Because that was kind of the realization that I had, where I was like, okay, even like no matter how shitty stuff is, because like at the time, I can just describe what was going on. Like I had so many like baby pigs running around. My wife at the time was like a complete mental wreck. She was like on retreats. I had like my farm just felt like it was collapsing. Everything I built my identity on felt like it was collapsing all at the same time. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, I can fix this. Like I can just like, I can change this. I can sell the stupid pigs. I can sell all the animals. I can sell this whole farm. I can do something else, And it's like, this is kind of what I was getting at with the Korea story, where like, no matter how much you feel like you're stuck in a situation, you always have the power to change, This is like the first like knowledge of a sotapan or whatever is like, no matter how stuck I am, I can get myself out of this situation, Like just change something, anything, Like when you're in that situation, if you do have like thoughts like that ever, just realize I can literally do anything else. I can run around naked in the street because if I get arrested, who cares? I was gonna die.
If
like,
you're gonna die, like anything's game.
It just doesn't matter. It's so hilarious. And I think sometimes like there's such a seriousness talking about suicide, and I think it could have been helpful for me actually when talking to therapists and things like this, because I talked to so many people for so many years. For somebody to just like point out, like it's a really funny choice, it's a really like silly thing to do in reality, and nobody really pointed that out to me because there's such a seriousness, a graveness, like, oh shit, I hope you don't actually do that. And it's like, okay, you would already have done it, right? You're talking right now, so it's not a reality, it's a theoretical thing right now. But yeah, Dhammarato, though, of course, like when I had mentioned it one time to him, that was his reaction, as he was like, what a hilarious idea. That's really funny, and like, yeah,
he talks about the strategy for therapists if a client does do that, to be like, okay, let's do it right now.
Here's the gun. Yeah, here's the gun. He was like, if I was a therapist, I'd have a gun in the room and be like, all right, I want to watch. And it just shakes us up out of our shit, right? To realize like, wow, I'm taking this all way too seriously. Like, and it can be too serious with the Dhamma too, which is like where Alex is at, I think, where he's like, it's just so serious and I got to study this and I really got to like figure this out and figure out what the practice is. And like, and yeah, the harder you try it, that actually it's kind of, for me, it feels like the more I get away from any semblance of practice. But.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's like the harder you try, like the more you struggle, like the worse, like the quicker the like quicksand like sinks you.
What we're practicing is exactly not trying hard, only trying enough, and especially in the West, we have the habit of trying way too hard, and we only need to do just enough to change the thoughts from unwholesome to wholesome right now. That's really all there is to do. That's the only effort.
Do you think? I think this was something that Alex might have hinted at, but not known how to express, which is the concern that if we just change the thoughts to wholesome, but we don't then do like Vipassana, that it won't lead to permanent like awakening shifts, where you have like, it's like no more effort to think wholesome thoughts and you're just that way forever. Because I think that's what he was sort of like hinting at when he was like, I guess he wanted like.
I think that he's practiced a lot in the wrong way, and it has a lot of momentum right now, and that's what's going on for him. As my like to not be too judgmental of a fellow friend and fellow practitioner, but that would be my assessment based on what it was like for myself.
I was like that when I first started doing this method. I was like, shouldn't I be bullying myself in order to sit down to meditate?
Right.
Because it was like, I'm not sure of her name, but Doug's friend that he was with was like, you know, she had to like make herself feel really like bad just to motivate herself to do yoga and healthy habits. So I had a lot of that momentum. I still do.
Yeah, I think we all have that. And what you have to remember is that, like, okay, this really opened something for me. Is you know, the tradition and the way that it's taught by a lot of these like Eastern teachers, and this is sort of the drawback of learning from Eastern teachers. Think of the society that they're coming from, right? Is like when you go and visit somebody in like Southeast Asia, generally they don't have like a lot to do, and they're really good at sitting and not doing very much. Like that's just the reality of a lot of their lives. And I mean, as a farmer, like I mean, I like this is just how it is, you know. And somebody described it where they were like, I was on a retreat and I saw one guy. He went out with a saw and he started sawing down a tree, and he didn't get done by the end of the day, and he went out and he saw it again the next day. And this went on for my entire retreat, that this guy, the only thing he did for like 2 weeks was he sawed down one tree, and otherwise he just sat on the porch. Now think of how different that is compared to our lifestyle, where we're going from place to place, constant stimulation and constantly beating ourselves up, like, you know. And so we have to have like a different way of working with ourselves. And so what can get a little bit weird is when you have sort of like Goenka, who's from, you know, this culture, and it's kind of like, hey guys, you can't just sit there, you got to do something else, you know. To us in the West, who it's like, hey, actually you can just sit there, just so you know. You know. Like it's
That's a really good analogy of the guy.
Yes.
Like, all he did for like 2 weeks was just cut a tree down. It's like he just had one task and he did it when he wanted to do it, and when it didn't feel natural, he just sat. What a more relaxing way to live than probably what most of us are used to.
Yeah. But we can choose differently too, right? Because like even in the West, that like you can choose your own lifestyle and, you know, have some sort of balance here with that. And that's why you're on this call right now, right? Is because, you know, ostensibly we're all trying to like relax with friends and stuff, you know, have people point out stuff and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, I've had a good day today compared to before.
Cool.
It's one of my up days where the practice is working and I'm not where Alex is today, which would have been yesterday when it wasn't working at all, until I started getting some support from Jeff and Keyshawn, and I think Parker as well.
This is where sometimes I think Alex, some of the thoughts relate to what you're talking about. Is we have these kind of, in one way, in a very real way, they're delusional in the sense of we're taking the past or the future and we're summarizing it. Like the thoughts you were talking about Alex having is, okay, I'm happy right now. The thought that arises, is this going to last forever?
Yeah.
And that reflection is delusional. There is no forever. There is no future. And it's a tricky thought, but that's just another unwholesome thought. That once we're feeling good, the thought arises, is this going to be this way forever? There is no forever. That's another unwholesome thought. We can relax and be happy right now.
Like what I think I spoke about this. I don't remember if it was recorded. It might have been, but it's like when we're suffering, we're clinging to the good times, and then we're in the good times, we're clinging to the good times lasting. And so there's always like you're never like really just like letting yourself relax completely as like deeply as you could. I mean, you can still relax, I guess. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, until you get to the point where you realize that you can make up your own story, so you can decide to focus on whatever in the past you want to focus on, if you want to, because it's all occurring in the present,
Yeah.
you know? And so you get to rewrite your
so
own story. You get to
So
rewrite, you don't have to compare anymore. This is what Parker was getting at, where he's like, just, it's really unwholesome to be like, this was a good day, this was a bad day. You can just stop doing that. You know, like, you just don't
It's
have
so
to do it
scary
anymore.
to do that though, because then like, of course, like the worries
Stop.
come up. But then what if I have a bad day if I don't remember how the good
There
day
is no
was
bad
different from
day,
the bad
but
day
there is
we
no
can
bad day.
structure
What if I have
the
a
day.
bad day is the unwholesome thought, because there is no
Yeah.
bad day.
Yeah, because
you
it's
know?
just the moment. It's
Right.
so funny. It's
And
sort of like,
day is this very silly concept. I've come to realize that the sun rises, it falls, and we need to rest in between, so we sleep a little bit. But why is that? Why is that lying down and going unconscious for a little bit? Why is that so important to have this concept in our mind of, oh, the sun was risen this time and fallen this time, and during the sun's arisal now, I was happy, but last sun arisal I wasn't. Like, it's just one moment. It's a very ridiculous concept that we
Yeah.
all get in. And I think it's partly because the strong work culture, and that's how work hours are scheduled, and
yeah, everything's
the idea of
wired.
needing 8 hours of sleep every night, and going for the 9 to 5 job, and that's kind of how the ordinary life is scheduled. So if we can get out of that and realize that that's all just concepts, and all we really have is right here, right now, it is freeing.
Yeah.
It's really helpful for me to like disconnect from like computers and clocks for a little while, you know? And I don't know. I personally, I found it like to be helpful to have like some period where it's just because you really see the like that it is a little bit hilarious, this whole system that we've set up for ourselves, you know, and the weekend culture, you know, like for me, I act the same on every single day, you know, like that's that, like if there is a day that's made up, there's just no difference, you know. So it's really funny for me when I like see somebody and they on Saturday they're really relaxed and they're like, oh yeah, you know, and then you see them on Monday and they have like a totally different personality, because like wow, you know, you're totally making that up, because we could switch that Monday with Saturday and like have an agreement like socially that we do that, and you could just act like it's Saturday every single day, you know? And
Yeah, or like when I don't know if you guys remember when you were in school, you had that feeling on Friday before the weekend. It's like that Friday feeling. It feels
yeah,
great. Maybe we're gonna go out that night.
yeah.
Like, you can have
So
that
we're
Friday,
teaching ourselves to just have that feeling all the time, you know, whenever we remember
that
and wake
Friday
up to
moment.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day is a holiday. Every moment is a holiday, for
Yeah.
that matter.
In this fear that you have of like that I'm not doing enough like looking or enough Vipassana or something, like honestly don't worry about it, because like obviously Dhammarato has read like so much of the suttas, and there's enough like wisdom and Vipassana focused things within the suttas
I really
that
think
it comes through in his teachings. It's just some stupid sort of like Western mentality thing that we have.
I really feel
that's
like Daniel Ingram, like he did such a disservice to so many people with that book, like Mastering the Core Teachings, because he literally says like the only way to like achieve like lasting like enlightenment is like you have to do Vipassana.
Well,
Like, he
it's
pretty much
mixed.
says it like straight up. He's like,
But
if
he
you don't
says-
do Vipassana, you can't get it.
It's
But he says that
mixed in the sense I could say the same thing. I found the Dhamma through the Mind Illuminated and didn't have the perfect practice instructions. But on the other hand, it was a very well marketed book that reached a whole lot of people, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't have found the practice otherwise.
Yeah.
And we can be really grateful because of that, because it was a precondition to this what's happening right now.
And I don't mean like the whole book. I just meant that line, because that
Yeah.
line is really, because that was like the book that like got me into like
But
the
what about-
Vipassana stuff, and so that
but what
so that's
about
really where all
that
my questions from that one line.
He's
But I've been tripping
but he's
over.
also constantly reminding us to not be anxious practitioners. He's giving a lot of like advice for different like teachers that are a little bit softer and focus on metta and focus more on samatha. And he says it a lot. I think it's because
He
like I'm
doesn't
not
say,
sure.
make yourself suffer to do Vipassana. He just says do Vipassana.
I think what you have to understand is his context for this. Like, I don't know how many people you've met in the like Dhamma like world, But there are a lot of people who are sort of stuck, and I can see how his book could possibly push you out of the spot that they're stuck in. Right? And so it's written for a specific type of person. And unfortunately, it's been picked up by people like yourself that they don't have a massive like samatha background, and like it's not who the target audience is. Basically, the target audience is somebody who's like been practicing a really long time, and like I one of my Vipassana friends, she's a really nice lady, but when I discuss like meditation with her and stuff, like basically for the last like 5 years, she's like, well, I get some like nice light tingly feelings on my face sometimes, but on the surface, besides that, like everything is like totally average with her. Like if we started talking to her the way that we were talking right now, she would be totally lost, because it just there just hasn't been much that's sunk in for her. So like she might benefit from reading his book. Unfortunately, she's never going to pick it up, but like that's who it's written for, right? And so you can't like write off the whole thing, because it has led people astray to the other end of the spectrum. And we see this so much with young people in their 20s on like, this is just a normal thing nowadays,
It's like
and you see that Dhammarato talking with Daniel Ingram, they do get along, What were you gonna say?
I was just agreeing with you about the 20-year-old things, but yeah, no, I've seen that conversations. It's like two Dhamma lions, I think was something me and Brandon said, because we watched one of them together. It was good. Yeah,
One way to understand Vipassana in terms of the language Dhammarato uses is the investigative quality. The right view, that the right noble view is investigating every moment like it's a new moment and not clinging to old definitions. And I think that's the real what people can do is not quite investigate really how things are. Like they can sit on the cushion.
I'm always
but
confused about what is meant by investigation. Like
investigation.
Is it you're contrasting two things like very quickly?
One analogy.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
So like I guess there's the analogy that was used of the security camera, right? Or even a video camera. You can have a camera that's just at photo, and this is kind of what we're doing. How most people live their lives is they'll have a concept that they develop when they're really young, and they'll live by that concept their entire life without actually applying that concept to see if it really still is applicable, right? So there are certain rites, rules, and rituals or things people think they should do that they end up doing their entire life that are completely inadequate for their situation. Like feeling bad when you don't have to, and you can just feel good now. So that's the picture, and that's the ordinary right view that a lot of people have. But then, I guess a picture or a security camera works. Imagine a security camera that doesn't move at all and is just still the whole time, compared to a security camera that's looking around the room and panning around and investigating everywhere. It's the active quality, and not a lot of times we just have a way of how things should be and following it because it should be that, but actively questioning those, should it be this way? Do I really need to be feeling bad right now? That's the active quality of it. I guess you talk about comparing something, maybe something worthy of comparing to is just dukkha dukkha nirodha. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, like, Dhammarato's practice is so stupidly simple, and it's such common sense once you sort of get the hang of it. But I don't know. Maybe
It's simple, but it's complex at the same time, right? I mean, like,
it's simple in the sense that all we have to do is we have dirty laundry. All we have to do is put it in the washer and clean the laundry. But everyone else is like, where's the washer? How do I fold the laundry before I put it in? What kind of laundry do I use? You don't need to know that stuff. All you need to know is to put it in the washer.
And like the first time I asked that question, like every time I like, because I've asked that of Dhammarato, I think probably in like a second call or something, and I was like, what about Vipassana? And he said the same thing that you did, which is that's a thought of the future, and like sometimes I get a bit irked because I feel like my question's not really being addressed. But I like how you sort of went into detail about like how important right view is for doing investigation. Because I've asked people before about investigation, and it trips me up. But yeah.
Well, I mean, you can investigate the body, though. I mean, like he always is like instructing us to see what's going on with our body, play around with our body.
Yeah, so you are
know?
like watching the
And
sensations. You are being
yeah,
mindful
why
of the
not?
movement. In order to
I'm
remove the
noting.
dukkha, you have to be
Look,
mindful.
so you
Like,
can note your in breath, and it takes like 1 mind moment. And if you're having like a normal pace of breathing, it'll be like 5 seconds or so. If you're meditating, I think Dhammarato, he says 8 seconds until you have to note the out breath, right? So you have 2 mind moments within 16 seconds. What are you gonna do with those other mind moments, right? You have to do something, right? So change, like noticing unwholesome thoughts and changing them to wholesome, like that's one thing to do, right?
does the
What if I
mind
already
have
have
to be
what if
moving
I already have wholesome
for it to be
thoughts?
investigation? Does the mind have
Sorry?
to be like sorry, I was just asking, does for it to be investigation, does the mind have to be moving? Or can it be just still? Does it have to be moving and looking at a new
Nothing
object?
is still. I mean, everything is always changing
The
and permanent.
investigation is when you could say the mind is fit for work, and there's still like that's what's meant by applied and sustained thought. Once this thought is sustained, we can start investigating. We can sustain our attention, say on this conversation for a while, because that thought's sustained, and we can continue that pattern without getting sidetracked by something else. The ordinary mind doesn't sustain thought well. That's so the first practice is applied thought, which is first getting into that wholesome state of first jhana or whatever you want to call it. That's the first practice, getting into that place over and over again. And then once the mind is fit for work, then you can start sustaining that thought and investigating the things that are worth investigating. And yes, it's worthwhile investigating. That's
as long as it's not unwholesome, as long as you aren't like beating yourself up about it and like, oh my god, I got to be investigating more,
exactly.
or like, what's the right thing to investigate? That's my usual unwholesome
it's
thought
like,
that I
what the hell
have.
do I actually investigate?
Yeah. So my usual unwholesome one is like, I got this like massive list in the back of my head of like all the different like Vipassana subjects you can have, like birth and death, or like the body, or just there's a like, yeah, there's tons of them back there. And so my mind will then be like, okay, do this one, okay, then do that one. It's like really unwholesome, right? Because you're like,
yeah,
you're like
Sure.
beating yourself up to
when
like
you're
try to jump around to all these different things.
when you're investigating one of those words, do you just think about it and then you just also like wonder what it is, or do
Just
you
do
like
it.
compare it to its opposite? Like,
Just do it for yourself, it like, because I think the best way to do it is like you just have to try it out and see, like, and you get like little pointers and tips and things like that, but like, I think you've had enough like kind of like tips and pointers and stuff of like what
yeah, I've
I'm
probably
doing.
read too many books at this point, and they've become problematic. I've been told that by a lot of people because I've read The Mind Illuminated and then Daniel Ingram's book and all these other books, and I got too much information.
It's not too much. It's not too much though. I mean, it's pretty wholesome information that you got, right? Compared
but it's
to like
overall.
the idea is that the information isn't what's intrinsically valuable, right? We can have all the concepts we want. If we don't apply those concepts to reality, that's where someone can get lost, in the sense of reading more books and not actually using the information gained from the books.
Yeah, that's the thing with me. I ended up getting more confused. I told Joe about this yesterday, where for the last like 1.5, maybe it's not 2 years, about 1.5 years of meditating, that was when I discovered the jhanas, thanks to Daniel Ingram's book. And like the whole time I thought I was getting into these jhanas, I realized was actually with what you guys said when I asked you how do you define this jhana the other day, I think the day before yesterday, I realized like all those jhanas that I've been getting into was just like different sort of access concentration variants before even the first jhana. And it was so discouraging because I thought like
It's okay.
I thought
It's
I'd
okay.
been
It's
getting,
just
like,
They're
all
just
these
words.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, they're just
They're just words. It's okay. You know, like
get to the point where you're happy enough where whatever the first jhana is that people are talking about, you don't care. Or whatever
Right.
whatever number
Yeah.
it is, or whatever this enlightenment thing they're selling you.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is good enough. I don't want any of that.
I think that's kind of like one of the last books I read, because I've stopped reading books for a while to like focus on just doing Dhammarato's method, and that's the only practice I do now. One of them was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and I really like that because a lot of times, like I would think, well, I must be getting these like highfalutin altered states of consciousness when I really wasn't, and I think, oh, I'm up like here, like I should already understand all this, and I'd have like all the conceit and the like prideful spiritual ego surrounding it. And then like now that I've sort of just sort of especially doing Dhammarato's practice and like realizing that, wow, I was actually very, very unhappy. I still am very unhappy most of my day if I wasn't consciously doing this very, very sort of simple basic instruction. I would be miserable, and that's not spiritual at all. So I kind of realized like, wow, I really like don't know how to practice at all. Like I don't even know what I'm doing when I'm being mindful.
but you just
Whoa.
but you just remember, and like, and it comes back to you, right? And like sometimes you just have to trust that, like, you know, you do know what to do. Because I have these thoughts sometimes that like, holy shit, I've never practiced and I don't know what I'm doing. Like that thought occurs, and then
That's
you
how I
just
feel.
recognize that as an unwholesome thought, and you laugh at it, you know, and
Yeah.
and as
Or
soon as you
or
remember,
it can be wholesome as well though, because it can be sort of like humbling in a pleasant way, I guess. Like
yeah, if you can find, yeah, I see what you mean there. Yeah, that it could be pleasant. But I
Yeah.
think what Parker's saying is really important, of like, if you're in such a good state of that, like, you don't care if somebody criticizes what state you're in, and they're like, because like, you know, you might meet somebody and they're like, oh, you haven't ever gotten first jhana, you haven't gotten this. But if you're in such a good state that it just doesn't matter and it just doesn't affect you, then who cares, right? Who cares about all these
It's
labels? And
it's like
like,
who's the
it doesn't
winner?
matter.
You're the winner in every situation because well, not every situation, but in any
In
situation
that
you're just happy,
in
right?
that moment you are. In
So
that
it's
moment
satisfaction.
you've got it, you know. And
You're
you're
doing
gonna
like
you're gonna
practice.
forget again, but that's why we have sati, to bring us back and keep remembering and just keep doing it over and over and over again, you know. And like, you know, I don't think you should beat yourself up for like reading too much, because like, if your mind has some momentum with that and it's really into reading, just read the suttas, you know. Because like all of a sudden you're gonna stop saying, oh, this is Dhammarato's method, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, this is the Buddha's method, you know. Because like everything that he says, it comes out of the suttas, you know. Like it's so like, he is so on it, like with all of his teachings, that like I almost can't believe it, because I've been talking to him for a while now, and like he'll spit off a sutta and it's always like relevant to exactly what he's saying
I
at
have
that
been
moment.
reading actually. I've been reading the Buddhadasa books by recommendation of him. I asked
Yes.
Dhammarato what suttas to start with, and he said Buddhadasa would be the place to start. So he teaches me how to read suttas.
Yeah.
So that I have actually been reading, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's all focused on sort of one method, I suppose, as opposed to just trying to figure something out by triangulating it from every source I could possibly find. And then
I think what Joe's getting at is, when there's a habit of doing something, like I should read, we sometimes respond to that with the sense I shouldn't read and I don't want to read anymore. And what we're talking about, the noble view. The noble view is, I'll read when it's worth reading. I don't need to set a rule for myself to tell me when I should or shouldn't read. I can just read whenever it fits.
It's like not having homework. Like
exactly.
You don't set homework.
Yeah.
We don't have any homework anymore.
Yeah.
What a freeing way to live and think. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's crazy how one of the craziest observations with doing it over the last 2 months or 2.5 is how quickly I can get really good momentum and feel like I'm on top of the world, and then how quickly I can forget how to practice and go to misery city. Just how quickly I can go from those.
It
And
gets
it's
yeah.
yeah, I remember there was one week where I was just like, I think me and Keyshawn were talking about the parable of the mustard seed, and I was like, call me the mustard farmer, because like I've got these seeds everywhere, and I'd just been like amazing for like the whole week. Then I crashed down just like happens to Alex and stuff, and I got super miserable. And only yesterday and a little bit today, by just getting that constant, consistent focusing on the breath, just absolutely unremitting, just refusal to not be happy. It's like I've been able to come back to being relaxed again, and I can already feel like it's some moments in the day. It's like the pity gets so strong. It's like I'm like coming or something. It's like, oh my god, this is crazy, and I can and I'll have like some fantasies about like some successful future for myself, because it's like, well, if I feel good this way now, and if I keep doing it, maybe I'll feel this good forever, and then I'll be ultra happy and successful, and all my dreams will come true, and I'll notice that, oh, that's unwholesome. I'm thinking,
My dreams have already came true. Everything's okay right now.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all right now. All back to right now.
Yeah, it's so yeah, it's so complete, man. It's
And just don't beat
It's so
yourself
simple.
up when you fall off the horse, right?
I think my approach to it is going to be like, I'm going to do this practice for like a good, like, I think I'll definitely give it like a good 6 months, just because I'm someone who likes to,
Don't do
I
6
guess,
months.
have
Just do it right now.
yeah, and then maybe after then, like, if I hopefully have more stable mental health and I'm not going down into these depressed lows, then I might maybe like see if like some of the other methods can like help me to get like a permanent awakening from it,
Well,
as opposed to
there's
what
never
you
an
have to like work
there's
to,
never going to be
or
anything
not
that's
work, I guess,
permanent.
'cause it's the opposite.
It's always right now. It's always right now, and there's nothing permanent. It's just Dhammarato has the analogy of people have the misconception of awakening or enlightening being like this, like I'm always enlightened and it never stops. But really, it's just sati, and eventually it gets so quick where the sati is unremitting, as they call it. You're never going to find
But
anything permanent.
some people like I've met have said that they've had like shifts in their perception, that they don't have to do any expend any sort of effort or thought, and it never goes back to how it was before. Like Frank Yang, for example, like he claims to be an arhat, and he says like nothing he can do can change his arhatship attainment.
It's the same way as why you brush your teeth every morning, or whatever habit you have. It just becomes a habit. So as we develop habits, they become less effortful. But that doesn't mean there is no habit anymore. It's still the habit comes up, and when something unwholesome comes up, people still have unwholesome thoughts. It's just so quick that it feels effortless.
Yeah.
It's spring loaded is the word
That's
Dhammarato sometimes
Yeah.
use.
The sati starts doing itself.
Yeah.
Like, and I've noticed that for sure. And we've discussed this a little bit. Of like it goes from being a struggle to sit to then like it just seems like it just goes on its own sometimes. And like I can see how the potential for that would potentially be described by somebody as like not having to put any effort in, because the momentum of it carries you forward, and the unremitting sati leads to the unremitting, etc. on down the list. But yeah, I think projecting and like planning our enlightenment, that can be a real like pitfall sort of thing. The sort of like 6-month plan thing. I've been down that road of like being like
I'll do this technique for 6 months, and then I'll be really good at it, and I'll be happy really a lot more easily, and then I can start doing the more advanced, complicated.
Have you ever heard the song Que Sera Sera? Whatever will be will be. That really that's really powerful if you can recognize that you really don't have to go and control the future, and you can't really do that anyway. Whatever will be will
it's
be.
true. All of my
Que
plans
sera.
have come not true. It's always changing. Always some new information came.
There's no point of planning for the most part. Most of the planning is very unnecessary.
I completely agree. It's strangely addictive, despite being such a laborious chore.
So then have the practice be whenever you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to be doing this for 6 months. I'm going to be doing this for right now. Recognize that thought is unwholesome. That there is no such thing as 6 months. All there is right now.
That's great. Well, thank you guys. And I will say this, I promise this is the last time I ever talk about permanent awakening. I think your answer has satisfied my curiosity.
That promise,
doesn't matter.
that promise
I've
is
asked
I'm not going to be
Dhammarato
doing
that,
this in the
so
future.
many times.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, you know, we
Oh
all
yeah,
need
there's no
like,
future, it doesn't matter.
yeah, and we
Exactly.
we all need clarification on things, right? Like, just not being afraid to ask the questions, right? Like that for me, sometimes that can be kind of like I'm like, oh shit, I have like this image like amongst you guys, like I'm kind of like embarrassed to ask this question, or like sometimes I'll find myself where I'm like, oh shit,
That
like
was me, because I was like, I'm like the mustard farmer. I'm so good at this technique. I figured it out. I'm giving the advice now. I'm schooling all of you guys. And then like a day later, like something comes up in your life, some big like event. For me, it was some stuff from my past, like starting to see like some sort of I don't know, just like weird traumatic things I didn't know were traumatic. I'm still not entirely sure of it, but like something comes up and it knocks you off, and it's like, this practice is BS. And I started doing other practices because I was like, well, I have to keep doing it. It's not good enough. I have to keep doing it every moment. I want something that is done. But yeah.
But that's what that's what Sangha is for, is like just reminding us when we don't have it like within us, you know, and reaching out to other friends and stuff.
It's amazing to see how much, despite how self-righteous I was just yesterday morning, how much happier I am today, having talked to you guys and having got the advice and everything.
How much happier you are right now.
Yeah, how much happier I am now in this moment than then. When I was
but you're still comparing though, because it's still an idea. It's still an idea, because there was some moment when you woke up and you weren't aware, and like you could have even had a really pleasant moment, right? Like at that moment of waking, you don't really know, you know, because all that you're aware of is like here. And so like this comparison, this part of us that compares experience, you know, you just have to keep looking at that and like, where is that coming from? Like this sort of like, I was happier here than now, I'm happier in the future than now. And yeah, I don't know, can be helpful maybe. It's been helpful for me.
So keep on guard for those thoughts.
I always it's the small, like kind of subtly unwholesome thoughts that I miss, like comparing.
It is.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Like the idea of promising someone something, like that is very future based, and it is a rule. I'm not going to do this rule, so you'll be happy. We don't need rules here. The noble right view would be to think we don't need to promise. We can just have trust, have confidence that every moment the sati will be there, and we don't need to set some rule for ourselves that we need to follow in the future, because we'll be investigating then too. And
I think
and again and again and again, we're continuously investigating.
It's crazy. My mind
I really like
sometimes resist these ideas, but I know it's just common sense. Like
what I really like about this Sangha is that there's no pressure on like having to give back either, right? Is like there's just a momentum to it, and like it comes from Dhammarato, just like giving, and there's not this sort of like internal like, oh my god, I got some advice from Parker, now I have to like pay him back somehow or something like that. It's such a wonderful momentum to just be like, hey, we're just building on each other and building on something that happened 2,500 years ago, you know, and it's just continuing, flowing, like it always has, like it always will.
That's such a great way to think of it. Yeah, I think of it that way too sometimes. Sometimes I think of it as like, well, I'm not going to say that, but that was the other day. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? I'm curious. What were you?
Oh, I was.
Because it's within the, as long as it's within the present moment, as long as you're aware, you know, of your thought. It's not like you have to like stop thinking about the past, right? It's like,
yeah, it was kind of like
awareness that it
It's not
occurs.
that bad, but it's sort of like neediness. Like I felt like quite guilty and ashamed for always like because I found a lot of the things like because my practice was really hectic, to be honest, like, and it still is like really high highs and low lows, um kind of like Alex's, to be honest, but I think his lows are more predominant than his highs, versus I think I'm high more of the time than low, but none of the
I think you're
symptoms work
starting
that I
to
do any
I
of
think
that.
you're starting to get quicker and quicker, wiser to realize what actually happens with those lows. Like you're saying, the thoughts that can get you into unwholesome are trickier now. They're not as gross as they once were. Um, and when you start noticing those thoughts that are less gross, and the thoughts that are like say like promising something someone in the future or whatever, then you can realize those are unwholesome, and then more and more wholesome there. So the mind, the tendencies are unwholesome. That is the conditioning, and the conditioning will continue going, and it'll get trickier and trickier, and those are the ones that will last the longest, the ones that we don't necessarily realize are unwholesome. But as the wisdom, as the right view gets more skilled, we can throw those thoughts out too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I'll re-listen to this one. You have a way with words. Yeah, that's really good.
Oh, we
Like,
weren't recording it, were
it's
we?
like conceit. Conceit's a big one.
Yeah,
Conceit's
Robert
so
recorded it.
Oh, good. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I kept it going. Conceit's like, because it's like conceit and anger. Those are ill will and conceit. Those are the thoughts with those sort of flavors are very, very tricksy. Yeah.
Yes. People tend to have their favorite tendency that they that runs deep,
Yeah.
you could say, and
I
that
think for me it
trying to
might be
follow it all the way
restlessness,
down.
because restlessness is so deep. I haven't even started to notice the unwholesome qualities of it and the dukkha in it yet, which at least I'm starting to do, the ill will and conceit. Yeah.
Some of it's your age too, maybe, because like I don't know, you're a little bit younger and like just naturally, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could just be a
Energy
natural
and
process.
yeah.
Yeah. What's the one for you, Parker, that you notice the most? You're always so freaking stable whenever I see you. I want to know what you struggle with.
The similar to what Robert is talking about, there's been the restlessness and conceit. There was something where there gets to the idea where we need to learn something, and I think that's an old habit of I need to be learning this, or so I can compare it to other people in a way that's favorable to me. Of that conceit of, and that doesn't mean one shouldn't be learning at all. That curiosity can be a great thing, and it can be something that's driven by compassion for others instead of wanting something so you can learn it for yourself. There's once things are okay, we don't really need to be doing anything, and that's the restlessness of the idea that I think I need to be doing something, but there's really nothing to do, and it's irrational, and it's old programming of thinking you need to do something, but there's nothing to do. The story Dhammarato gives
I was
is
thinking of restlessness as just like fidgeting and moving too much, but yeah,
the
no,
person
I do that even more.
the person who lies down, the farmer who lies down, and he feels like an anxiety in himself, and he's like, how do I solve this anxiety? Oh, I haven't fixed the fence yet. I'm gonna go fix the fence. And he has the delusion that him fixing the fence is curing that restlessness, or fixing it somehow, but really it's maybe he's just more paying attention to fixing the fence. He's not paying attention to that restlessness anymore. When he lies down again, the restlessness is still there. It wasn't fixed. It is really just that feeling and that tendency that we're working with, and not the outside world.
Yeah, I lived my life like that. I mean, I was that farmer.
That's how I live
like,
my life right now, man.
you know, like going from one task to the other, and like I remember having this conversation at one time, being like, I love being a farmer because I can always find something to do, and then I don't have to feel depressed because I'm just always busy. And like that was literally my theory. My theory was like, if I'm just doing something all the time, then I won't feel depressed. And that's my solution to my depression.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my God.
And look at how much money I'll make too, you know. Yeah. In the process of
Yeah, it is that. That's a great point. There's the restlessness, and then once we're holding on to something we're gonna do, we start holding on to that and justifying why we should be doing this thing. Oh, it makes me money. Oh, I'm gonna be smarter than other people than I do this. Oh, whatever. But if you can stop it at the point of restlessness, you don't need to do all that stuff to make you feel happy. You can just feel happy right now.
it makes so much sense. For now.
Right now it does. Right now it does. And right now it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, like I think the one that I struggle with the most recently has been doubt of like just having to constantly reaffirm to myself like, oh, it's okay, like you're doing like a good job, like you can be okay right now. There's some like doubt that still creeps up in my head of like there must be something else that I should be doing.
That's
you
me
know,
with the Vipassana. I always have the doubt that Dhammarato's technique.
You're waiting
won't
for the
get
secret
permanently
teaching.
awakened because Daniel Ingram said so, and he's respectable and famous and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I've got to do Vipassana, and then I'm asking all these questions and stressing myself out and making my moment worse.
You're waiting for that
Yeah.
like secret teaching. I remember
Yeah,
being on
right?
my first like
Yeah.
Vipassana retreat, and like I had no idea what like the retreat was going to be about. So the first 3 days, he's sort of like building you up for this like super secret like technique or whatever, and it turns out to be like a body scan. And I remember just being like, "This is it. This is what we've been building up for, like staring at our breath for like 3 days is like this body scan. This is like the master secret teaching or whatever." And like all the teachings, they are inherently pretty simple, you know, like it's just how it is, you know. It's like, but you have to actually do it, right?
Yes,
And
you
like
do the minimal effort required and keep doing it and keep doing it. But
Yeah.
it is really simple.
yeah,
That's great.
we like to overcomplicate it.
I have a
though.
question for you, Parker, which is if I'm like having like sort of a fantasy about the immediate future, like after this call, I'll go eat a bowl of cornflakes. Like if I'm like really looking forward to it and it's filling me with lots of piti sukha to think about the cornflakes, is that unwholesome?
Well, like you're saying, look at how you feel when you think that thought.
I feel really good. I feel really good. I feel like it's unwholesome when I start doubting if it's wholesome or not.
Yeah, yes, it gets unwholesome when you're started to want those and cling to those, and I need to have the cornflakes. But if there's just the thought of cornflakes, you can just let that be.
Yeah,
and
like
realize
I'm not,
that it doesn't apply to this
like
moment.
I'm not gonna like end the call or like leave early to get the cornflakes. It's like just something. Oh, that's nice. Like,
There's the wholesome thought that sometimes Dhammarato recommends is, oh, I don't need that right now, or I don't need to think about that right now. And I think that's a helpful way for things like that. When you're doing something and something else arises, we don't need to think about that right now.
you know, it's funny when you said that. I for a moment it came back, but for a moment I forgot about the cornflakes and I focused on the conversation, and I got a big sort of dopamine hit out of doing that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was a placebo because I thought it was the right thing to do. I don't know. I think these questions are maybe a bit advanced for where I'm at right now. I think so long
All
as
it
I
is
can,
is take a breath.
so long as I'm
It's
not,
Right.
so long as I'm not in
wherever
any
you are.
images,
I was gonna
feel
say
like I'm
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Wherever
I was
you
gonna say
are,
the breath,
advanced or
yeah.
not, it's always the fundamental. Take a breath.
Yeah.
Everything's okay right now. Change the thoughts from unwholesome to wholesome.
Yeah. Like
Even in
whenever we
sport.
find ourselves,
Even in
like
sport, there's the idea of players when they're learning a new sport will think that somehow they're too good for the fundamentals. They're too good to learn the very basics of the sport, and they need to do these things that make them look cool or whatever. But the
Like I need these cool
best
jammers.
athletes at the sport, all they do is practice the fundamentals. They don't need all that special stuff. and because they're practicing the fundamentals so well, maybe that cool thing will happen every once in a while. But they're not actively trying to practice that cool thing because the fundamentals are what get you there.
And it's just a happier way to live. Like when I'm thinking of the next like state that I'm gonna achieve or something, or like that's a really crude way to put it. But I mean like all the next like I'm gonna realize this thing about this concept in Dhamma, and I'll have this deeper understanding. That would be like the more of the insight version of it, I guess. Versus the shamatha version of it. But like even like thinking about that, it's like it's so I can just like feel like how like I don't know, conceitful it is as a thought. Like it just it's very similar feeling tone to the one
unnecessary restlessness.
Yeah, it's like that's just suffering and living like that.
Well, there's the delusion that something is going to be better by you knowing that something. But that's delusional. All that can change is right now, and you can make things wholesome right now, and that's all there really is.
It's crazy. Do you want to know a really cool thing really cool like philosophical contemplation that I came up with the other day was because like all like thoughts and reasons and stuff is like equally like untrue, then any reason you have to be happy now is like equally like true and like spiritual. And so just like enjoying the chair you can enjoy it. I came up with that after the last US Sangha, I think, with Dhammarato, when I asked him about that. That was kind of cool. It's like
That's wisdom.
Yeah.
Yes, that really concepts are only beneficial in helping us interact with the world. That there will be the delusional thought sometimes of, oh, learning this concept is somehow going to make me happier. But the concepts are only really beneficial in the sense that it helps you deal with your direct reality.
That's really good advice. And common sense.
Sometimes there's the idea that learning for the sake of learning in itself is beneficial. But if we don't need to learn and we can be here right now,
and if the learning spoils,
we only need to learn when it's beneficial.
Because you're like worrying when you're doing it. You're restless when you're doing it because you think you need something from the book, and like, it's like, man, it's crazy. It's like so complicated, but it's also so simple. Anyway, thank you guys for your time. Guys. I mean, feel free to. We've been going for ages, so I won't keep you here any longer.
Oh, I enjoy it. This is my social time, so it's great for me. I don't talk to anybody like any other time during the week, so for me it's great. I mean, I'm a farmer and I work for myself, so like.
I started doing that intentionally the other week just because my the way I was acting was getting out of hand, and I think. Are
you guys in
like some of the stuff I sent in the Sangha even was like pretty bad, and I was like purposefully like staying at home and not going back to visit my boyfriend because we normally go like every week or something. I'd normally go to visit him because he lives like an hour away, and I was just like purposefully not because I didn't want to like spoil the relationship by just saying something dumb because my emotions was just all over the place. It was either too happy and I was just like, I'm the superstar spiritual, I got the technique, I'm overconfident, or it was way down, it doesn't work, it's just like.
And the right noble view, then, the investigation would be that those are both concepts and those are both unimportant to what's really happening right now. That's the investigation that you're curious about.
Yeah.
All right. This has been really great, guys.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you. Amazing. Wonderful conversation.
All right. Have a wonderful moment.
Thank you guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.